I will never forget summer before 7th grade, sometime in July. Wednesday night, early Thursday morning. The evening before, my family had watched the old school show, Unsolved Mysteries. I awoke in the night, lying on my right side. Awake, but my eyes still shut, completely silent. None of us ran fans back then to aid in sleep. I was awake and basically waiting to fall back to sleep again. However, I decided to open my eyes. On the right side of my bed, right there, was a being, seemingly fixated on a plush bear that I kept in bed with me. And this being fit all the description I'd ever always heard about or watched on television. Shorter, pale gray skin, and those awful eyes. Huge, black, slanted, staring at my bear, right by my bed. Honestly, I cannot put into words how I felt right at that moment. I was only just about 12 at the time. At some point, I pulled my covers over my head and felt an awful rushing through my body of super warm, then cool, then warm again. Only later in my life did I understand that I was most likely feeling shock. I couldn't scream, I felt frozen. Too scared to scream, maybe. What if I did scream? My mother and stepfather and 2 brothers would hear me. What the heck would they do if they came running into my room and saw this thing? What would it do? Is it gonna kill me? Abduct me? What if it already had and they were returning me? All of these thoughts, plus a million more, just racing through my young mind. Awful just recounting it all and writing the story here. Again, how could I ever forget something traumatic like this? So, being such a brave 11-year-old, and after what felt like 12 hours, I decided to try and scare it. I decided I would thrash my legs up and down from under my covers as hard as I could. I know, horrifying. I was so petrified though. So I did this then, remained under my covers, just waiting. Nothing happened. So I stayed under the covers. This had to be at least close to going on 2 hours from when I first opened my eyes and saw this thing. As I lay wide awake, I heard a noise. And to this day, I still cannot explain exactly how it sounded. The sound felt as if it surrounded me and was coming from outside. It was a crisp, clean sounding sound, maybe mechanical, but maybe not, lasting only about 2 seconds. A sound that I definitely had never heard before and definitely have not heard since. As soon as I heard the sound, something in my mind told me, oh, they're gone. As crazy as it sounds, I firmly believe the sound was their transportation leaving. Needless to say, I didn't sleep the rest of the night, early morning. It took me so long to confide in my family about this terribly scary incident. Of course, they did not believe me. However, now, from time to time, my mother will mention it and suggest that maybe that's why I suffer from insomnia now. Very well could be. This is my first post here in Reddit. Feel free to share any thoughts. Also, my first time sharing this story publicly. Would be reassuring to hear any other stories of similar happenings. I have also posted this in our alien abduction. So, I am skeptical when it comes to abductions. I've always been aware of the reported cases and the generic medium that they tend to follow. Now, don't get me wrong, I am a firm believer in extraterrestrial life out there somewhere, but do I believe they come and visit us and abduct people? Not necessarily. No, because it's usually a nutter who comes forward to say they've been taken. However, I have a different view on the subject at hand, now due to an experience, as it were, of my own volition. I'll need to set the scene here, so you'll need to bear with me as I put this all into this text. It's not an easy subject for me to broach. I am your typical average Northern English chap. I'm 33 from Lancashire. I'm an engineer who has a fiance, 2 kids, my own car, rented house, 2 cats, and a gecko. I go to work Monday to Friday. I put my NI, national insurance for all other countries, and income tax. I socialize with my friends, and I would say I am somewhat intelligent. I am nowhere near as remarkable as those who say they've been abducted. Saying that, I do have quite a few things in common with them. I am terrified of owls, all of them. It doesn't matter how big or small they are. They scare me to death. Now, I am not talking being freaked out of I saw one and would get my guard up. I'm literally, oh fuck, that's an owl. I'm out of here, and take off running. I know that some people experience a rational fear of birds, but I don't think about other avian creatures, just owls. Yet, for the life of me, I cannot fathom where this fear comes from, and it isn't something I have had my whole life. I just woke up one day as an adult, and I'm terrified of them. Secondly, synchronicity. I experience what some would feel as a random series of events. For me, they aren't. I see patterns where others don't, and have reoccurring instances happen often. I constantly see the number 352 in a lot of things, which, after some research, comes back more ominously than I care to really think about. Thirdly, I suffer from sleep regression and restless leg syndrome, which started roughly 10 years ago when I was 23. Now I currently reside in England, yet during my early 20s I lived in Spain, just outside of Valencia. I was there from the age of 21 to roughly 26, I think. Anyway, I have always loved the outdoors, and whenever I am indoors, I constantly have the windows and doors open so I can feel the breeze, smell the trees, hear the birds and insects, and living in Spain at the time was brilliant. I lived outside of a small village which had a rough population of around 1,000 people, and I was 15 minutes drive from the town or 40 to 50 minutes walk, depending on my walking speed. My parents bought an old orange grove finca, which was basically a brick-built shed just to keep the orange grove pickers and workers out of the sun so they didn't get dehydrated or burned, somewhere for them to take a break. They bought the building and renovated and extended it to turn it into a 3-bed bungalow, which they used as a holiday retreat. I was currently spending a few months alone after a bad breakup with a girl, and whenever I was low or feeling down, I would fly out to Spain and spend a few months there to recuperate and fix myself. The house didn't have mains electricity or phone. Electricity was provided by a big diesel generator on site, which cost an absolute bomb to rent and refuel, even with red diesel. So I didn't run it all the time, as I said. I love the outdoors, so I would sit in the sun and read a book or tinker with my car. The internet was via satellite, which was charged on a monthly contract and ran with a dish and a dongle. This is the bit where the story begins, as it were. Around mid-December, I was in my office, which was the third bedroom, doing some paperwork for the local part time job I had as a window manufacturer. It was Spain. There was nothing really to do, so I helped a local lad out with his building of windows. While chatting with a friend on Skype in the States, I mentioned the generator and internet for a reason, as well as the number 352, because I have gone over the now disappeared logs from my chat with my friend. It was the 18th of December, which is the 352nd day of the year. Around 2 p.m., while chatting with my friend, the window was open and the birds and whatnot were chirping and life was good. I had a power cut, which is not too unusual, as I said. The electricity was provided by a generator and the internet cut out. My my laptop battery was dodgy and wouldn't hold charge, so usually when the power went out, the laptop dies. These are the events leading up to one of the weirdest moments of my life, and some might say I am fabricating this, but have you ever experienced an event that will stick so vividly in your mind that you can recall it detail for detail over 10 years later? The birds stopped chirping and the insects stopped buzzing. There was a sudden silence that is so invasive, it's deafening. The webcam image of my friend from America stuttered in static, and the power went out, following by what I can only describe as a sudden rush of wind. I jumped up out of my chair and peered out of the window. When the power came back on, the webcam jumped back in, followed by the almighty roar of two fighter jets scream over my house and roughly 200 feet, moving ridiculously fast. Following what I can only describe as an immense bright ball of light, it was 2 p.m. The sun was beating down and this thing was still bright. Literally, a split second and both the ball of light and the two fighter jets were gone. It shook me to my core. What I had just seen and described to my friend who was telling me that my image froze on her end. I thought about it for a few days, and the town was awash with stories of jet planes in our town. It eventually died down though, but not for me. This is where I started noticing things. I wasn't really looking for patterns, but I would notice reoccurring headlines in papers and that damn number popping up. 6 weeks later, I was back in the UK, living in Todmorden with a friend on his farm. He was out of the country on holiday, so I was watching the place for him. One morning I woke up with a terrible headache, which I don't normally get, so I put it down to being dehydrated or tired and carried on with my day. I also noticed that my watch had stopped at 3:40 a.m.-ish, but it was my granddad's old Seconda kinetic watch. You had to shake it to wind it, but no matter how much I shook it, it wouldn't start up. 6 months later, something happened again. It started with leg tremors and sleeping issues after that. I have never been able to sleep since. My right leg will start to shake uncontrollably, and I am restless while being utterly exhausted. That's been going on for years now. This is also when I took notice of my irrational fear of owls. I have no noticeable scars or lumps on my body, no missing memories or time that I am aware of, and no real drama or worries in my life that would cause any of this. This isn't really a cry for attention, and I can't express the fact that this is not fabricated. I have a great attention to detail, and I remember all of these experiences as if they happened yesterday, because they stick in my memories like a thumbtack. I'm awake at 3 a.m. because I'm anxious. I had an encounter. During my sleep, I had a dream that was so vivid and felt like I was retrieving a memory rather than constructing nonsense. In my dream, I had awoken in the middle of the night from my bed. I'm a 21-year-old college female, and began to walk to the kitchen for some reason, probably for food or water. As I approached the hallway, I felt beings behind me. They were my height, about 5'7", light gray, bulbous heads and skinny bodies, thin limbs with fingers and toes like a frog, large black eyes and thin mouths. There were two of them. I tried to scream, but they had some kind of control over me to where I couldn't make a sound, and all the dogs were silent. As they walked past me, one of them booped me between my eyes, and I collapsed to the floor and watched them go into the kitchen and rummage through our things as if they were inspecting how we lived. I slowly lost consciousness. The next morning, I woke in my bed with my sister waking me up, and my memory told me something about a TV was off and was evidence something had been in the house. I feel like I'm not even supposed to be talking about this, but I woke up from this dream and immediately began vomiting and became ill. I don't know what to think. 21-year-old female. I'm curious if anyone on here has experienced anything similar. I don't use Reddit much, but figured this would be the best place for me to bring these kind of vague questions. To get right into it, for as long as I can remember, I've been pretty in tune with things. I wasn't raised spiritual at all, though as a kid, I always had adults calling me an empath, and I had many extremely vivid, recurring dreams that would actually unfold in real life years down the line. I've never sought out a psychic reading intentionally, but somehow every once in a while, every couple years, maybe more often, I'll meet a person who tells me some creepily spot-on, deeply psychic kind of shit. Maybe I'm fucking schizo, but I'm pretty positive that I'm not, and that I've had actual conversations with certain individuals, telepathically. The first time it happened to me, I was sitting beside my friend after a long day, and his voice came through in my mind as clear as day. It scared the shit out of me. I ended up crying and coming up with an excuse to leave on the spot, because I was that freaked out. He eventually told me something super cryptic about aliens and how I'm not from here. I wrote it off at the time and stopped hanging out with him because it was just weird to me. But since then, I've had even more similar experiences with multiple others. Sometimes it's happened with close friends, but just as often it will happen with complete strangers. People I don't even have a real opinion about. I happen to be an exotic dancer as well, so I'm constantly meeting random people and nut jobs. Nothing surprises me much anymore. I've learned to read people extremely well. Yet, it still surprises me a bit when I get this kind of thing, because it doesn't happen at work. I get stopped on the street randomly. Back in 2016, I hiked part of the Pacific Crest Trail in Nevada with a group of friends through the high Sierras. On our way into the mountains, we saw what we decided at the time had to have been a UFO. We saw it shoot across the sky one more time 2 weeks later on our way out, maybe only 5 miles from where we had seen it last. I remember us all losing our minds about it, but as the years have gone by, I kind of just wrote it off as probably a satellite or a meteor. but why would it have been flying so low and slow? I saw a similar shape in the sky a week later, while we were setting up at camp at the base of Mount Shasta in California. I was alone that time, and I kind of forgot about that too. I've never said anything about this to anyone, or even thought about it much till now. I wonder if there's something to it. Last week, I met a masseuse who happened to be a psychic. Among other things, she was able to tell me exactly where my bedroom was located in my childhood home. She knew I had been homeless before in my life, and knew I spent some time hiking in the West, and even told me someday in the foreseeable future, I would find myself in Arizona and experience a drastic, but ultimately positive change in my life. Eerie stuff. Thank you for stopping by to check out the latest episode of Strange and Unusual Stories. If you have a strange and unusual tale, check the description down below and send me a quick email. Please feel free to share any suggestions or ideas for this new series. Leave me a comment down below. If you would like to keep up with future content, make sure to subscribe and click the notification bell. See you all next time. And as always, I am your host, Marie Lives the Horror.